Welcome in for this week's live Expedition to Soul podcast recording. I'm Sara, founder of the Sisters Enchanted. And for a few weeks now, we have been doing live podcast recordings every single Tuesday. And this is one of those. After this, you'll be able to watch this video wherever you are watching it, if you're watching a video. And we also take this audio and put it on our podcast player. What's really awesome about putting it on the podcast player is that you can actually make yourself your own podcast playlist with any of the different topics that we discuss on the podcast and take it with you wherever you go and create sort of your own little magical toolkit of goodness to carry around with you. All right, this is the live recording of the Expedition to Soul podcast. As I said, I'm Sara, founder of the Sisters Enchanted. And today I am talking about communication and how your communication style might be sabotaging your ability to receive, expand, manifest, and enjoy life in a soul-aligned way. Now, how is that for some easy conversation on a Tuesday morning? How your communication is ruining everything. Now, I'm just kidding. That's not the case. And it's not just you, it's all of us, and it's everybody in our lives too. I want to point you to a tool every week for the past few weeks, and we have one more next week. We have been sending out free Season of the Witch gifts. I somehow cannot pronounce that word. Gifts in our email. And if you're in our app, I've been posting them there. And last week's gift is a guide to your Mercury sign and communication. So if you get our emails or you're in our app, be sure to look for that. I have one printed out here in front of me as a little reference tool in case I need it. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Now, if you did look at this guide, or maybe you haven't, that's totally cool. You don't need to have in order to enjoy this episode. What you see in the guide is for each Mercury sign. Now, just like your sun is in a sign, that's your zodiac sign, right? I'm a Sagittarius sun. Your Mercury also has a sign. Now, I also happen to be a Mercury Sagittarius. I have a lot of Sagittarius. And your Mercury sign has both a shadow and a light to it. So it's sort of the strength of communication, and then also, that kind of sabotage area of communication. And whether or not you know your Mercury sign, I'm also going to give you a tarot example in a little bit here. Your communication style, whether you want to look at it through astrology or just what you know to be true about yourself, your communication style can really hold you back from living a life that feels fully soul aligned. And what's a soul aligned life? It's a life that you feel joyful to experience every single day. Like you go through the day and think, I'm so lucky to live this life. I'm so lucky to have these experiences. And when things don't go so great, you feel fully prepared to live that circumstance. And you feel like, I know the tools to get through this. I know where to ask the questions. I know where to get support. I know how to support myself through this. That's what it feels like when you live a soul-aligned life. Like everything is where it's supposed to be. You're doing exactly the right thing for you in that moment. And of course, this can shift over time. But that's soul-aligned living. And your communication style can really keep you away from that. Now, let me give you some examples of how this might show up for people. For example, if you have family members, mothers come to mind, mother-daughter relationships. If you have family members, friends, somebody in relationship with somebody, and you feel like whenever you talk to them, there's bad communication, there's arguments, they just don't hear you, they're not supportive, like it's just not a great, healthy relationship, right? Maybe though, you desire to have this healthy relationship. You really desire to move past it. One of the things that I would bring to this conversation, that I would challenge you to consider, is your communication around that situation. Are we communicating from a place of resentment, from a place of hurt, from a place of wanting validation and wanting the other person to see us in a certain way? And when they don't, we don't get that validation, we don't get the apology. That's where our communication might fall into that shadow place and really keep us from having some semblance of a relationship that feels joyful or feels like at least a little bit like it's bringing something to your life in some way. I see this with money too. Money is an interesting thing because how we communicate with money, one, it's what we say about it, what we think about it. That's pretty surface level manifesting. If you ever hear anybody talk about money manifesting, like what you're saying about money, what you think about money, but also how you spend your money is a form of communication. The actions that you take are definitely a form of communication. So when you feel like, oh, I'd love to expand my money, I'd love to create more money, I'd love to have an abundance of money and manifest more money in my life, I would bring to this conversation, what are you communicating with your spending habits? Are you constantly looking for the most discount, cheap thing you can buy? This doesn't mean to say just go spend money you don't have, but when you spend money, what are you communicating through those habits? Do you spend money as if there's never going to be more? Do you spend money as if you're only worthy of the very most cheap, least expensive thing you can buy? What are your habits around money communicating? So our communication comes both from what we're actually saying, what we're bringing to a conversation, and the actions that we take. And all of these things can really keep us from living this life we want to live, a life that feels truly soul aligned and a life that feels like there's room to create and manifest and expand. I'm a mom of young kids, and I hear a lot from other moms of young kids. And even if you're a grandparent or you've got adult children, another way that we communicate and maybe sabotage the relationship that we want or what would feel really juicy and delicious for everybody is again through our actions. If we communicate one thing with words, but communicate another thing through actions, then we aren't bringing into alignment what it is we truly want to be able to create it. And this goes with holding boundaries, setting examples, saying, this is the rule in this house. This is what we do. And then following through with it. And even doing that with yourself. What are you communicating to yourself when you say, this is what I'm going to do, but then you act in a different way? And this is how our communication really sabotages bringing into our lives what we want to bring into our lives. Nobody's life is perfect. I live a very amazing, super great life, and I'm very grateful to do that. And there are things in my life that are a work in progress. So what I want to do is look at this to apply it to my own life in those specific areas. Maybe you're thinking like, Sarah, I have this amazing, beautiful life, but where is the one thing you're still working on? We always have something that we are working on, right? And apply this to that area. So let me give you some examples, and I'm going to refer to this Mercury sign and communication guide. Again, this is one of our free Season of the Witch gifts that we've been giving away. We've been sending it on emails every Tuesday and Thursdays and Sundays, and it's posted in our app community also. So if you're in the app, you can find it right there in a post earlier from today. If you are watching this or listening in real time on September 20th, you'll find it there. And what you'll see is how to find, there's a link to find your Mercury sign firstly. And even if you don't know your Mercury sign, just read through this document because there is so much goodness in there to be learned from every sign. And even when you do know your Mercury sign, it might not apply to you because of other things happening in your birth chart. I know that's the case for my husband. He's a Pisces Mercury. And when you read about a Pisces Mercury, it doesn't really sound like him. So the light part of Pisces Mercury is sensitive, intuitive, imaginative in their communication, be talented at communicating through art, poetry, and music. Now, my husband is not somebody that I would call sensitive, firstly. And it also says that the shadow would be that they can easily be swayed by others and lack barriers. That's also not my husband. But there's other parts in his birth chart that really would speak to why this is. So whether or not you look at the guide, read through it and just consider like what might you learn from this, because you can learn something from every single sign, not just your own. An example for me though, as being a Sagittarius Mercury, the light here is that I'm open, honest, enthusiastic, passionate about communication, which is very true. That's why I'm here doing what I do. The shadow to that, though, is that I can have these big picture ideas and overlook the details and do that in communication, which is also very true about me. And Sagittarius energy is also quick shooting when it wants to get something, which means I can also talk before I think. I can lay out an idea and then realize that's not exactly what I wanted to communicate, and that's not exactly the right way. So understanding your communication barriers, how you communicate with yourself, with others. If you are a person who does manifesting rituals, or who maybe you pray, maybe you know, call to the moon, or whatever it is that you do, however you send some message out to the greater thing beyond you, consider how you communicate those messages as well. So often I hear people who are just really truly desperate to bring something into their lives or to find an answer, and communicating from desperation versus from a place of understanding, willingness to grow. That's two different kinds of communication. So communicating with yourself, with the greater energy that's out there, whatever that is for you, with other people in your life. How are you communicating through your actions? All of this communication can either really enhance your ability to receive, to grow, to cultivate, to manifest, to create a soul aligned life, or it can just as easily sabotage all of that for you based on how you are communicating. All right, let me give you an example here using tarot as well to drive this home a little bit more. If you're a tarot reader, maybe you're not, that's okay too. The minor arcana in tarot, there's 4 minor arcana suits. There's the pentacles, the swords, the cups, and the wands. And each of them tell like a mini story. They start at ace, which is the 1, and they go to 10. And through there's trials, there's tribulations, there's action and adventure, there's sneaking, and there's decisions. And it's a really great story to read. So I totally recommend you learn tarot. And we've got some classes to help if you could use one. Anyway, when you look at a tarot story and all of the suits, like I said, they go from ace through 10, which is 1 through 10. When we start at the 2s, with each, we look at the 2, which is the first, it's the first part of the story that has a definitive image to it. So a definitive part of the story that sets it apart from the other suits, right? Now the 2s, they are always, typically anyway, they are one person with 2 things. In the case of the cups, it's 2 people and they each have a cup. But what we have with 2s, we have decisions. We have the ability to grow. There's an opportunity. There might be a decision to be made, a lesson to be learned sort of thing. There's balance with 2s. But what we see with the 2s, we don't see conflict. We see that we're presented with an opportunity, right? We're presented with a decision to make. We're presented with choices, future paths yet to be discovered. There's possibility in 2s. There's possibility in 2s. By the time we get to the 5s, which is our middle, remember the story goes 1 through 10. By the time we get to the 5s, which is only halfway through, we reach conflict. All of the 5s have some sort of conflict to them. There's a conflict with other people. There's internal conflict. There's a conflict around not having enough resources or enough support. How does this apply to communication and what we're talking about here in terms of sabotage? We all start the day with this like choices, possibility, anything can happen. And at some point in the day, we encounter that 5. We encounter that conflict, whether it's with us, it's with a bill collector, it's with somebody asking you for the 349th day in a row what we're going to have for dinner tonight, or it's your coworker, or your pants that don't fit but they fit last week. Whatever it is, there is some point in the day when we reach a conflict situation. And this is where our ability to create this soul aligned life or sabotage comes in. Do we walk into that 5? Do we walk into that conflict? Or do we remember that everything is a choice? Which way am I going to go with my communication? The light or the shadow? What's it going to be? And that takes time to learn. That's a skill that you develop over time, because so many of us, I raise my hand as a Sagittarius Mercury and a Sagittarius Saturn and a Sagittarius Sun and a Sagittarius a few other things. We are quick on the draw to say things, to react, to think things, to make decisions. And it really is a practice of coming back to ourselves. I talked about this on last week's podcast, to come into our own energy and consider our communication through verbal communication, internal dialogue, and what we're saying to the universe or God or whoever it is that you communicate with, and through our actions to shift the tides into creating, receiving, soul aligned living in a way from sabotage. And that does take time. What I love about what we do here at the Sisters Enchanted is we really have a whole toolkit available to our students of resources to help you do this and grow this skill. We teach it through what we call our 5 eye spiral. So we start with intentions, and over a series of lessons and learning, we grow our intuition. And when we grow our intuition, we are better able to hear our inner knowing, and we're better able to see, I'm walking into this way of communication that's actually going to sabotage me and not get me where I want to go. And again, that comes with time. Those of you who've registered for Magic Week already, there's over 400 people registered. If you haven't got your seat, get in there. We're already doing giveaways and whatnot. We're going to look at this through the expansion archetypes. And what we're going to look at is your expansion archetype and what that says about your ability to receive, but also how to sabotage. And it's not directly tied to astrology, like I've given examples of here today. And the reason for that is because, like my husband, your birth chart has a million pieces to it. Okay, maybe not a million, but there's a lot of pieces to a birth chart. And depending on what's happening, it could make a standard piece of you, like my husband's Pisces Mercury, not relevant at all because of other things that are going on. So when we start with our expansion archetypes in Magic Week, it's based on actions and thoughts that you have, which are going to help us get a faster, clearer picture of who you are, how you receive, and how you sabotage. So if you're not registered yet, get in on Magic Week. It's going to be so good. This week, we have our members guessing my archetype, Anna's, Christina's, and Sarah Mill. And Christina's our student success and support sorceress. And Sarah is our curriculum designer and writer and teacher extraordinaire. And y'all know Anna. She's my sister and co-founder here at the Sisters Enchanted. So that is the giveaway going on this week. So communication, what I want you to take away from this is to really think about how you are communicating, and through actions, through internal dialogue, through external dialogue, communicating with others, how you're listening to others, receiving the truth of others, even if their truth does not align with who you are, what you believe, or what you think to be true. I want you to sit with that one. We all live different versions of truth. And who are you to decide whose is true and whose isn't? And consider that with communication and how we're receiving, how we're putting out communication, how we're communicating with ourselves and through actions and decisions and choices, and what it's saying about us and the life we want to be living. And that is what you're going to take away from this today. If you're a tarot reader, consider those 2s and those 5s. If you're an astrologer, look at that Mercury sign. If you're none of the above, just listen back to this, maybe read through the Season of the Witch gifts and see what resonates with you, and just take bits and pieces and start being aware and intentional about your communication, where you want to be, and how you're going to get there. All right, that is it for today's episode, the live recording of the Expedition to Soul podcast. I hope that you all join us in Magic Week. It is going to be so good. It starts October 7th. And we have the link in all the usual places. You can reach out to us if you can't seem to find it to get yourself registered. We're already doing giveaways, and we have our Expedition to Soul videos waiting for those of you who register as well. So you can watch those and enjoy that video series while you wait for Magic Week to start. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. And until next time, I hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. Bye.